Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Is it still raining? Did it stop? All right. Well, thanks for braving the rain to see us, or to see these two. So I guess one place for us to start is just thinking about you two and your personal relationship. You've known each other for 25 years, is that right?
Yes.
You met as freshmen at NYU.
Yes.
And now, all these years later, you're working together basically for the first time. I'm curious to hear you both sort of talk about your respective works and your respective approaches to image making. So why don't we start with you, Emily? And I guess the reason to ask is to talk about the ways in which your differences complement each other on this For Freedoms project.
Absolutely. Well, we went to college together, and thank you.
You're
and my path post NYU went into a bit of a more commercial direction. I really wanted to be Annie Leibovitz my whole childhood, and interesting how things that you decide you want to do when you're a kid kind of manifest themselves into adulthood. So for the work I make to make a living is a lot of entertainment, celebrity portraiture. I do some advertising work. This is a selection of just a few images that I've made, in my own practice, which also includes some of my personal work, which is more landscape-based and maybe a bit different on the surface from the work I do for, a job. But in terms of the question about my practice and how I approach image making, it really is very similar across the board. To me, there's really nothing that goes beyond the fundamental aspects of photography. Yes, this is an homage to Larry Sultan. Color, composition, and light. There's really no getting around that, and those are the building blocks of any work, whether it's more documentary in nature, whether it's extremely lit and polished, or if it's just me walking around with a camera taking pictures of things I see. But I think in regards to the hows and whys Hank came to me with this project in mind is that a lot of the work I do over years and years is very much I have to approach it very systematically. I see where we're trying to end up. I have to figure out how to approach the shoot in order to get us to that place. I think this is that's it. So a lot of what I want to do is make fundamentally good pictures, and sometimes that means just pressing a shutter and clicking. Sometimes it's building. So.
And Hank, why don't you talk about how you sort of think about image making? And because I'm struck by Emily's description in the direction that she wound up going in, which was more ostensibly commercial. But I don't know, well, before you go, Hank, can you talk a little bit more about what the choices that you make or what the differences are between certain aspects of commercial photography and what you would describe as more personal images? Like, what is that? What do those images need that more personal things don't?
Patience. Well, the work I do as my job is, and I don't say that with disdain, I enjoy the work I do for a job, it's kind of over the years manifested itself into usually very large-scale productions. There's a lot of people on set. There's a lot of opinions I have to take into consideration. It's not just up to me what we wind up shooting, how it looks in the end all the time. There's a lot of different levels of each shoot that are way beyond just, showing up, making something look pretty, and taking a picture. Right. With my own work, it's very quiet. It's a very quiet time for me. No people. I don't shoot. I never photograph people.
And is that because you spend so much time?
I think it's just it's been a natural progression, but I think it is some sort of a natural reaction to, just how on I have to be in my work life. It's really a bit of a reset, and I don't have to answer to anyone, and it's kind of a relief a lot of the time.
So Hank, what about you? What about in terms of the way that you use images to express yourself and a worldview?
Well, it's great to be here in this room in DC, especially. I actually saw the first kind of performance art / collaboration I ever really understood in this very room. In probably like 1992, it was Sekou Sundiata and Craig Harris and one other person. And it was a performance called The Circle Unbroken is a Hard Bop, and very much about how creativity and collaboration goes together in making music. And one person was percussion, one person was doing a horn, one person was using their voice, and kind of every once in a while, one person would drop out from their role, and the kind of conversation would become about like what happens with the absence of this collaboration. And also I saw Charlie Atkins, who was the choreographer for the Motown dancers, actually on this stage. And I just remember him standing right there, like, in his 60s, kind of showing how about the precision and the working with all of the dancers to get the moves right. And it was, so I feel so fortunate to be back here sitting on the stage. And my mother was a curator at the then African American Museum Project. And I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts with these three people who were real artists. I was in the Museum Studies program, which was the laughingstock of the high school. And I know. But what we did, because we were so, like, they were, what do? You just look at images all day? Like, yeah, that's what we did. But what we learned really was critical thinking and how to think about how images can be combined to tell stories, and how history is a really, helpful tool in that. And over the course of the past 25 years, I've in various ways kind of used what I learned in that high school experience to talk about things related to, again, the history of popular culture and commodity culture and slavery, and thinking about how slaves were branded as a sign of ownership, and now we brand ourselves, and what does that mean? Who owns us when we are actually buying into a system that kind of tells people how to relate to us? And my work has taken a variety of forms out of photography to being working with quilt makers and using prison uniforms to make quilts. This one says "We the People." Having gone to high school here, thinking a lot about what the Capitol and what Washington, D.C. means, and thinking how we imprison more people in the world, in the land of the free, than anybody else. And then also inspired a lot by the way that political speech takes form in protest through the Memphis Sanitation Workers March and the signs that said, "I'm a man," and remixing that to various things, but in this case ending with "I am a man," and thinking about how our creativity is our opportunity to make the world that we want to be a part of, and also to recognize that our greatest gift is our consciousness. And that work has led to other work, and it's weird because all of these images many of them are referential to other things, but this is a piece called Raise Up, and it's inspired by a photograph of Ernest Withers, I'm Ernest Cole of apartheid South Africa, of miners being strip searched. And I always felt guilty looking at this image and felt that if I kind of remade it as a sculpture and I cropped it at their shoulders, it would give it new meaning and tell a new story. But in this new context, and by titling it Raise Up, it kind of opens new conversations. And I made that in February of 2014 for a show in South Africa. When I finally got to show it in December of 2014, it was perceived as the hands up, don't shoot piece, in reference to what happened to Michael Brown. And I can say a lot about kind of all of these kind of ways in which this work is kind of trying to bring the past forward, using kind of various issues that are recognizable in popular culture, but then also in this piece, which you can't tell of a photograph of Spider Martin, but it's also a mirror. So when you're looking at this image, you're also looking at yourself. And then very excited to also kind of have this, do more public work and have
That's my city.
Yes, as you know, an Afro pick in City Hall, because when we were children in Philly, the only images that we saw, or public sculpture we saw, really Klaus Oldenburg, his clothespin and other things. But what are the everyday objects of African American kind of experience, and where do they go in public space? And so, and then the Truth Booth is really very much an invitation for and a collaboration with Jim Ricks and Ryan Alexiev and Jorge Sanchez and Will Sylvester, but all the thousands of people who've gone into it. I think Melissa said that hey. So Talia, who we met, she walked up to the Truth Booth when we had it in Miami and basically wound up volunteering for like 3 days, and I haven't seen you since then, 2014. But it's really an amazing opportunity for people to just be open and vulnerable with strangers in public space. And that's really kind of the kind of thing I like to open up. And working with Emily in 1994, Nikisha and Emily, who were my best friends in high school. I don't think we've been in the same room together in 20 years.
Hi.
But so it's also kind of exciting because we're collaborating on a public project in Miami, and if anything, for me getting to have my more talented friends work on collaborations with me is it's the biggest kind of gift of it all.
So we understand now the sort of the different paths you guys went down. But what was, and you've been in each other's lives all these years.
Absolutely.
You've seen Emily's career take off, and she's seen your career take off. And I'm just curious about what the moment is that you decide to either ask Emily to work with you, or you saying yes to working with Hank, and why this particular project. I mean, understanding what I understand about your respective works, I like you can see. I feel like I understand why, but I don't. Nobody cares what I think. What do you guys think?
Tens of thousands, if not millions, of people care what you think is what you think.
This is not the occasion.
Nobody cares what I think.
So, how did this start? I guess is maybe the first place to begin.
Sure. So my friend Eric Gottesman and I were really interested in how we would speak primarily every 4 years along a political kind of campaign moment, and kind of be like, these people aren't making sense. They're doing this. Why aren't they doing this? And we were doing this armchair debate. And then when in 2015 we started revving up before anyone was announced to be running for president, for like our kind of usual political cycle debate. And then somehow he was like, well, we should do something. And he was like, maybe you should run for office. I was like, nah, you should run for office. and then we decided, and then I had been thinking about. I'd seen Rockwell's Four Freedoms images. Maybe I'd seen them at the National Museum of American History. There's a Freedom from Want painting poster, which I don't think we have a picture of it here. But and I remember asking, what do these four freedoms? What are they? And so, if you don't know, in 1941, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that everyone was entitled to four basic freedoms: freedom from want, freedom of speech, freedom from worship, and freedom from fear. Various artists chose to represent that in various ways, but Norman Rockwell's images were the eventually most celebrated, and then even used as propaganda by the United States government to sell war bonds. But
yeah, I mean, it was part of the State of the Union address
in
from that
1941.
Yeah.
But Rockwell's representations of America in 1943, 2 years later, looked basically, it looked like it was freedom to be white Anglo-Saxon Protestant and maybe Catholic. And that was really
Right.
diversity in 1943. And so we were like, what would those four freedoms look like in the 21st century? And literally, for years, we tried to figure out how to remake those images. We wound up starting a super PAC and then other things. But the haunting of trying to remake Rockwell's images in a way that felt authentic and real was what really we felt like we had to do. And another collaborator, Wyatt Gallery, kind of came to us with also trying to figure out, like Wyatt asked the question, what does a Muslim look like? Which kind of stunned us, like how do we represent a diversity of the United States if we're checking boxes, you look like this part, you look like this part. And then someone was just like, you guys got to get going. Ellen Sussman, who, and they were like, okay, well, we're three photographers. Wait, we can't do this. Call Emily. Yeah, we should definitely call Emily. And because Emily, many of us went different directions, but Emily has spent decades learning how to work under stressful situations with a variety of people and being creative and keeping a technical quality in all the images that she makes. And we had this humbling moment of recognizing that although the idea was there, it wasn't going to become real of the stature we wanted unless we actually brought in yet another collaborator.
And so what was it that when you were brought on board, what did you immediately understand was not, what did you understand you could bring to it, and what wasn't there?
Well, Hank and I talked about this at least a year, maybe 2 years before we actually did the shoot. There were sketches of, we already know what the images look like, but there were some sketches with ideas of, different people, just sort of like where we could go with it, which is a lot of times how work comes to me. It'll come in the form of a sketch, and I interpret that photographically. So, Hank and I talked about it a few times, a couple visits to LA, a couple, visits to New York or whatever. He would always be like, but I want to get back to that. I want to talk about that. I really want to do that project. And I was like, cool, yeah, great, let's do it. And then some time would go by, and then the next time we saw each other, he'd bring it up again. And then I remember one time we talked about it, maybe a second or third time, and I said, okay, if you really want to do this is a lot of work, I was like, we need to bring in a producer. I'm going to have to get estimates from people. We're going to need a prop stylist. We need someone to cast this. We need a location. This is what I need.
You said, I need my crew.
I need my crew. Couldn't do anything without my crew. And so the discussion was interesting because it was sort of a, this is where the differences in our practice, I think, kind of come into play a bit where, for me, I'm used to things being pretty buttoned up. The budget has to be this, like everyone wants to know what time this is happening, who's doing, every little detail is really gone through. Hank is a bit more of a.
I'm very detail oriented. Like, we're gonna do something, right? It's somewhere.
He's like,
Great.
let's do it. Which is it's a wonderful way to be. I wish I was more like that.
And yet, the thing still has to get made in this particular way.
Exactly.
And I'm watching the images, and what I'm really struck by, and for anybody who hasn't seen them as part of the show upstairs, Manifesto, you should really, I think one of the best ways to experience it is to just walk through that space and wind up with the 4 images that are hung. Because the experience I had anyway was that there's a lot of work there that is, ostensibly and inarguably confrontational, politically charged, but quite clearly trying to say something. Not even trying, it is saying the thing that if you look at the Glenn Ligon that's up there, it's saying the thing. And you guys, once you get to your work, there's you take this breath, and I'd seen the photos before I'd seen them upstairs, but what you feel in a sense is this emptying out and then sort of repopulating of ideas. Not so much that there aren't ideas in the Rockwell, but it's quite clear. For one thing, the Rockwells are like a received notion, right? Yeah. Like the thing about Norman Rockwell at this point is that the way we talk about him, the way that he exists in the culture is as this fixed element, right? He is, from the standpoint of art, one of those elements that we don't actually even really appreciate as art. It is just what we call now Americana.
Right.
I
was just going to say, I feel like, as a photographer looking at really studying the 4 freedoms, when I'm looking at it to prepare for our shoot, it's like to be able to capture the nuances in expressions and body language and the light quality and, all of those things. It's like, I feel like it does kind of get pushed a bit down. Just the technique and the artistry it doesn't get much better,
And yet.
Yeah, and yet.
the project is what you basically said, Hank. It is a questioning of what that Americana stands for and for whom it stands. The complicated thing about the 4 freedoms part of Roosevelt's speech is that, this is still the same administration that interned Japanese people, Italians, Germans, created redlining, that created the housing segregation crisis that we still live with today. But the distillation of the fundamental principles of that aspect of that speech are ones that are foundational to the way that we rhetorically talk about being American. And yet, we're in this moment, and like you said, you couldn't have predicted that what was going to happen was going to happen, and yet it was already happening when you guys were doing it, right? So it didn't come from nowhere. But I want to ask you guys about the actual thinking about the politics of the images, and if some of it, I guess, is casting, but some of it is tone, right? How to simultaneously respect Rockwell's technique and his talent, and I don't want to I don't know how to put this. Like, he is simultaneously guilty of something and innocent of it at the same time. And how you interrogate those images without, I don't know if you feel this way, Hank, but like how you interrogate these images, challenge them without denouncing them at the same time.
Well, for one, I think, actually, part of what gave me the courage to do the project when we did was that Tad Nakamura, whose father is Robert Nakamura, who's like the godfather of Asian American cinema, but was interned or imprisoned in Manzanar at 5 years old, made a film, Return to Manzanar, which is what Tad made, and both of them agreed to be in our photographs with Karen Ishizuka, who's Tad's mother, and thinking about so Tad is there in the Freedom from Fear image with his son and his wife, and thinking that, at a time that we were saying that Roosevelt was saying that people should be free from fear, from tyranny of their own governments, they're actually imprisoning Japanese Americans and disenfranchising African Americans and Native Americans, and well, keep going. But it's also about, for me, what is the hypocrisy of our moment? What will, when people 75 years from now look at our images, we tried, because like, people try to catch us like, oh, you don't have anybody like, yes, we do. See? But it was really organic. The day of the shoot, you want to say what, because you want to talk about how I do stuff, like when we showed up at the shoot?
In terms of
what
just
happened
the process?
when you showed up?
Oh, the first day?
Yeah.
Well, the first day, after many, many months of conversation, we showed up to our location to set up, only to have found out that we no longer were allowed to shoot in this space.
The fire marshal had shut us down.
Yes.
Damn fire marshal. It's always
safety,
that guy.
That's the kind of spots I pick.
Safety first, guys. Yeah. Right. So, it's funny to watch, like, the two of us hang sort of like onto, all right, well then let me go talk to this person. Let me go, and I'm over here like, I don't know what how are we going to make this work?
You're like, we're going to go eat lunch.
So, we asked, someone knows someone across the street. Someone has an office over here. We looked at a few different places. We literally wound up across the street
by knocking on doors
knocking
in LA.
on a guy who was like, happened to be home, happened to have a space. He had parties there before. He wasn't doing anything for the next 4 days.
Were you guys freaked out by, what kind of time schedule are we talking about?
Tighter than tight. Like, it was shoot day one, and in my world of working, this kind of thing is like a disaster. This is a disaster, and people would be getting fired and this and that. Not I wouldn't be firing them, but I might get fired, over something like this, and lots of tearing their hair out and everything, and and we, this is a different kind of situation here, and we were able to kind of, talk to a few people, maybe held us up a few hours, I'd say maybe half a day all in all, and we found another space, we paid the guy some money, we, started setting up, and we carried on.
But it was also, that's part of the collaboration, like, because I was freaking out, but Wyatt was like, something always seems to work out. And then after a couple of hours, Gina Belafonte, Harry Belafonte's daughter, was like, and another woman, they just grabbed our hands. They were like, we're just going to go we'll find something.
Yeah,
and
we're going to go talk to some people.
While we're setting up, basically, they're like, yeah, we're going to just, is it okay we bring a few people over? Because there was like an exhibition across the street. They were like, oh yeah, we heard that you guys are doing a shoot. Because we hadn't really casted for the shoot. And all of a sudden, I think that first night, while there were, how many people?
Oh, 50 at least,
like Van
right?
Jones shows up, and then my favorite is when Chuck D shows up.
Yeah.
And Emily's trying to like.
It goes back to your question actually about, how, paying reverence to the images, but also making our own versions with that, like with Chuck D, we have a version of the freedom of speech shot with him in the speaker position, and I kind of had a spiel I was giving each person in that position every time we brought a new person in about, where their eye line should be. This is the original piece that we're referencing, if you could either pretend to be speaking about something you care about or actually speak about something that you care
I
about.
feel like I know where this is going.
And I'm used to shooting all kinds of people, all kinds of personalities. I've had all kinds of experiences on set, and he's Chuck D. He stood there. He looked where we asked him to look. He did not move. I asked another time. If would you be maybe just looking out there and talking a little bit? Nope. Like, okay.
That's not where I thought this was going to go.
Oh no, but the beauty of it is just like he was like, I'll participate, but I'm in charge of how I choose to be represented.
He did what he wanted to do, which is very acceptable. I mean, that's acceptable for anyone. I'm never going to say, well, if you're not gonna, play my game, bye. It's like, no, it brings another level of
Authenticity.
right, and diversity and people reacting in their own way to what freedom of speech means to them.
Can you talk about the casting process? Because one of the things that you when you spend time with these images is just the way they're populated and how you figure out which people go where. Because on some level, and this is
That's
no
my wife, by the way.
That's Hank's wife.
This is just take this as like a thing coming out of my mouth. But like, there is like an HR aspect to figuring out who goes where.
Totally.
And how many people of XYZ
Yes,
thing you have in each image. And
those were conversations.
whose agency is being most clearly represented, and do we
Right.
have enough of
yes.
the politics of this process probably begets its own politics.
Man.
We'll talk about that.
Well, we
Talk
thought
about
we
the
were going to make
casting.
4 images. We thought we were going to like take, invite a few people, and I just knew that Tad and his family were going to be part of it, and.
Talk about the casting.
But the casting of the speech shoot, literally, people just showed up.
Well, yeah, but that's because we had so many other people reaching out
Yeah.
to their circles, and
This became a thing people
we
had to
basically
be
said we're
in.
doing the shoot, and then we reached out to our friend Claudia, and then other people. Then people showed up at the shoot, and we're like, "Oh, my father is seeking."
Yeah, like let me text him. Let me see what he's. If we hired a casting agent or agency, I don't think in a million years they would have been able. A professional person who does this for a living, I don't think they would have been able to come up with this many people from this many backgrounds.
Like 9 different Native American activists
And our worship
and they came up separately.
leaders.
Can I just stop you for 1 second? They need to try. That's all I'm going to say. Keep going. Because I'm not letting those people off the hook. Casting agents have to do all the work that you guys did and find those phone numbers. That's it.
Agreed. That is what should happen, yes.
I know it's hard. Maybe you can show them because somebody needs to.
But this, the truth was really about providing the space. We just said we were doing something, and literally we thought, the day we were setting up, first we didn't have a site, then we didn't know what we were doing, then we're setting up, and then
We don't
all
know
the
if
people
anyone's
just
gonna
start
show
to
up.
show up.
Yeah.
And it becomes, I think so, in the course that we shot, basically 5 days, we shot 210 people. And the thing is that you got to imagine that, people don't have time to
Yeah.
stand around for hours. So then it winds up being
These are quick situations where people are coming in and there's a ton of noise and commotion going on around us, and I'm trying to get people in and out as
you did
quickly as
worship and
possible.
we were doing worship and speech the same day, so they're moving the camera over here.
Yep,
One
we had
camera.
2 sets going. We're trying to get people in a real moment, which is also very challenging when there's a lot of commotion, not a lot of time. I'm meeting most of these people for the first time in my life, which is, a lot of what I am used to. But getting to have a real moment with someone where, they're in a moment of worship or prayer or whatever, and they're not so self-conscious about being photographed, and, being able to kind of be real is, it's challenging, and I feel like we're all old friends. There's so many people there. It's like, okay, we're
But
gonna
also,
be
Emily's very
efficient
cool.
and-
So like we're all like freaking out. She's just like in the zone and made people feel comfortable, focused on. And that's kind of what we knew, that if Emily weren't there leading the team, first there would have been many meltdowns. And her saying like, okay, I need to focus on this. Like, I'm focusing, we're gonna get this done. And then everyone, it's just how being calm in a storm, because it was nuts to keep trying to think about like that much
Also,
happening.
these pictures don't happen if there's real palpable chaos, right? I mean, the serenity, the power, some of the power of these images comes from the energy in them, and some of that energy is a matter of this sort of collective serenity.
Yeah. And
sorry, go ahead.
I was saying we wound up having 82 different versions. So rather than having 4, we wound up having 82 different versions of these images.
So, Emily, were you gonna?
I was just gonna say, to go to your point about the politics of, kind of navigating who makes what cut, and how do we decide when people feel represented and balanced and everything. It definitely, we shot a lot of people in different spots and then had the ability to kind of move them around, for lack of a better term, when we were organizing the final arrangements for our retouchers. It was, we would have, this person in like the speaker position, but also in a couple different crowd positions, and we would have to kind of figure out where, which one of them works, for the whole, not just where they might look best. And one thing I also wanted to bring up with the speech especially is, in the Rockwells, there are a lot of people's faces obscured. And you don't really see many of the people in the seats. And something that was important to Hank and Eric and was that everyone who took the time to come out, they wanted to make sure that we saw them, that they were recognizable. And so that was another challenge, kind of figuring out how to keep everything looking like enough like the original, where it was clearly, meant to be this image, but we're working with some differences in that we want to be able to see everyone's face, and figuring out, just those kind of challenges were
And
interesting.
and actually what happened, a lot of that was because when we started to see this kind of organically diverse group of people, we recognized that their own communities were their constituencies. And that if we wanted to actually have these images be seen on a broader level, that we could actually, each of them has a story to tell, and each of them, no person is more important. So if you have like
Right.
Rosario Dawson, Jesse Williams, great, but I don't know them.
Right.
But
You also-
they're equally as important.
Right.
But the power, but again, one of the other powers of these images is that you want to know, or you feel you're drawn into whatever the drama is on these people's faces, or whatever you think they might be saying in this setting, right? So like, and what is this setting, right? And what is supposed to be happening narratively in these pictures? It's almost the difference between what's happening in the Rockwell and what's happening with yours is there is this sort of additional layer. There's a kind of urgency that doesn't exist in the Rockwells, right? And you do ask a lot of questions about what's happening.
And so when we gave them to them, so we gave everyone their images and they put out on social media basically around within the same week. What happened, I remember I sketched out an image for Time magazine, and I wrote to people that we knew at Time and other New York Times magazine, asked them to like, you know, if they would be willing to like maybe do a story about these images.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. Yep.
See, yeah.
Stone
Emma's
cold.
like,
I can see what you mean.
Stone cold.
Never mind. It was awesome. Yeah, and he put his hood up. And
Yep.
it was amazing.
Yeah.
Because if Chuck D was being able to be told what to do, like why?
Yeah,
you
I
know.
mean, I'm not telling him to do anything. Yeah.
But so we realized that, you know, we had all these different people to show this different side of the stories, and many of them wrote about their stories. And we asked these publications to put it out. Nobody would. But Time agreed to put it up online, which was great. And out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere, Eric's like Alicia Keys, who I know, but didn't know that I was part of Four Freedoms. She's like, she likes the images and she wants to help us get these images out. I was like, okay. and then virtually overnight, you know, you have like, you know, Kelly Rowland and like, you know, Jada Pinkett Smith and like Maxwell and, you know, like all these people who like are like basically like 50 people with 50 million followers are now seeing these images because they were all put up around the same time. And it was like, wow, the greater kind of impact of it just got expanded. And then Time magazine came back to us and was like, oh, we'd love to put one of your images on the cover.
Isn't that always the way?
So it's kind of amazing to think about that other element of like, and she's, because Alicia was not even in the pictures, and she saw the value of kind of how these spoke to all these different people.
I actually would love to know what those, like, I don't know who didn't say yes at the Times magazine where I work, or like at Time, or, I mean, I don't know if was there a conversation about, did it get to a conversation level?
I mean, I tried multiple times,
Okay.
National Geographic.
Because I'm just curious about like what the question is, because I will be honest with you about an experience I had with these images, and
Can't you just lie?
no, I'm not gonna lie, because they're great, and I want to explain. Like, So immediately, the first time I saw them, I thought, well, why did this need to happen? Mm-hmm. Like, why? What actually went through my brain was, why do that? And the reason that I have the job that I do is that when I have that question, I then sort of sit down and ask myself, why am I doing that? And so I sat with them for a little while. I mean, but the other thing that I was saying before about the sort of elemental aspect of Rockwell is that this is crazy. I mean, without even realizing that I felt this way, I sort of felt like this person and his work were weirdly sacrosanct in this way. And why do this? And I was like, Wesley, that's why you do it, because you're being conservative Wesley, and that's not how this works. And these images are obviously simultaneously relevant to 1943, but the values they espouse are timeless American values. And then, so what does it mean to rethink those values with people against whom those values are not being applied, right? And that's what's happening in this moment. So, bravo, because I think that sometimes people don't want to do the work to understand why. I mean, this is kind of why art scares us in the first place, is because we don't like to be challenged or unsettled or made to think. And these images do that. That's another one of their powers. I want to sort of ask you about art writ large at this particular moment. And you know, you're doing a lot of, you know, inventive and confrontational things that are speaking to this moment. But what is it like to create right now? Is it is there a charge? Do you feel sort of responsible for doing and do you feel responsible for speaking to this moment in some way? I mean, you obviously are with these images, but are you guys having these conversations about what our responsibilities are as artists?
Me? Well, it's interesting because I remember when we were, shooting this and kind of when I was prepping for it, and I remember asking Hank, what are we doing with these? Where are these gonna be? And Hank's like, I don't know, like, could be a billboard, could be, on a magazine, could be an ad somewhere, maybe it'll be this, maybe it'll be that. I don't really, and I'm so constrained, I feel like my years of working in the capacity that I do, my thinking is so constrained, and Hank's thinking is way more abstract, and I had to really let go and be like, yeah, okay, we're just doing it. We're making it. That's what we're doing right now. We're making these pictures. We're doing the shoot. We're photographing the people. It's gonna come together one way or another. It may end up somewhere, maybe on the walls of the Hirshhorn, or it may live on a hard drive and no one will ever see it again. I'm right now, I'm gonna be in the moment and I'm gonna do this right now in these 5 minutes with this one person and do the best I can. So, I feel like that the act of doing is so important to asking the question of why do this? It's like, yes, agreed, exactly. Like that is why. That's why, and that was a really, really wonderful thing for me personally, to be able to step outside of my own, uptightness and
I recently saw my original sketches, which were from 2011. So I asked why I do this for quite some time.
This was the question you had been asking yourself.
Yeah, 2011.
Right.
And it was just like, and then as I said, I'd spoken to several magazines, and no one was saying we should do this. But then, frankly, there were some friends, like Ellen, like some art collector friends that I told about the idea. They were like, yeah, you got to do this. And then we're like, and then Eric and I were stalling, and they're like, they said, well, if you do this, we'll buy the first set. And we're like, okay, it's now a set of what? And so really, and that's why really a lot of times the collaboration is about other people kind of faith in you, and then they found other people who said that they would do it, and then we were like, okay, now we got a budget. And then like literally 6 or 7 months later, they're like, are you guys ever going to do this? Because, and then we're shooting, and I'm like, this is like, it's a mess. Like you show up, there's no place to shoot, and then people start showing up early, and then like all of and then we couldn't get all the people in the room at the same time. So there's all these things that were like, oh, this is just a terrible, terrible idea, which I have many. But the fact that people kept showing up, I was like, I guess these people are giving their time. Like, think about that, 200, we went from maybe 5 to 10 people to like 200 people in, over the course of 5 days to show up to be a part of these pictures. And they understood the value of it in some ways more than we did.
Right. I think as a photographer, when I'm shooting someone and I can tell that, even if I'm grumpy or I'm, whatever, I'm annoyed at something, that it really has nothing to do with them. And it, especially something like this, where this has meaning upon meaning for, I assume, everyone who took the time out of their day to be in these photographs. I definitely have to flip the switch and make sure that they feel that, we are grateful for them being here. They are being focused on. I'm giving them the same attention I give every other person. And I think that when people feel the subjects feel like we are all taking this seriously and they are appreciated. We are really doing something here, even if it looks like we're doing too many things.
She
like,
shows up with her daughter, and like that's like a different element. Like,
There's already
right,
a Dawson.
yeah.
and that's so. Then a lot of people brought their some people came back,
Yeah, and brought their parents, or
It's really amazing. I mean, just the idea that the without even knowing the need that you created. I mean, in a weird way, it is like the project that's outside this museum, right? It is people entrusting you with their speech in some ways, right? With their presences, but their presence
Their
is a vote of
representation,
right.
yeah.
Yes.
And
yes.
I knew I was part of another. Like if it was me, they'd have been like, "Oh, this may have been a bad idea." But Emily,
Why do you say that?
I
What do you
feel
think?
the
Emily,
opposite.
you have to understand how cool Emily is.
Okay.
She's
cool.
And like
Cool.
she is, like even when she's stressed, she's like, "I'm very stressed. Man, this is terrible." Dude.
But it's also because I come from a land of people yelling and stressing and, hours and hours of conference calls about things that don't matter. And it's like, to me, it's like, this actually matters. This is actually, this is something. And I'm used to things going wrong, problem solving, having 50 to 100 people looking over my shoulder while I'm doing something, like all of that kind of stuff, as well as the technical aspects of the job. This was a challenge, but in all the good ways, not in the bad ways. I knew it was going to be that way going into it, which was actually quite fun for me because I'm very nerdy, and it was very exciting to actually have that. But I think that just in terms of it's not that I don't get, I get stressed about certain things, but I never let that infiltrate the,
But that
the
also
shooting process.
puts faith in other people. Like as a subject, if you're walking into this place and there's like 10 or 15 people standing there looking at you and like asking you to kind of be expressed or to trust, and that's part of why Four Freedoms is a collaboration, because we recognize that not any one of us could always kind of do, has the ability to focus in different ways. So in a lot of ways, Wyatt, who I think was in one of the images, is like he really got into the puzzle piece making of okay, I noticed this person over here is like this, and I'm gonna and I'm like, okay, great, have fun figuring out these different combinations.
I mean, not to be that person, but that's America.
Yeah.
That's how it should be.
Right.
Everybody figuring it out together.
It's like I'm bringing one thing to
And
the
solving
table.
problems
Hank's
instead of
bringing
making
another
more
thing
problems.
to the table. I mean.
Can I just ask? So I just want to ask. I don't have a pointer.
So
there's
in
Wyatt.
in the Norman Rockwell, the depressing thing for anybody who doesn't know anybody who doesn't remember the Rockwell image, there's there's just a turkey and the celery in the original Rockwell, and you look at the picture and you're like, these are good middle class people. The Depression is over. Why are they just having turkey, celery, and whatever in the tureen?
Sad.
So I don't know what the conversation was about getting some other food on that table.
It was a conversation.
Bravo.
Was a conversation.
And also, but also the question is with the turkey. So there's one with Douglas, I think Douglas Maxwell on the left, who's Native American, holding the turkey, and that has a totally different
Yes, of course.
conversation. But also then some people who showed up, I don't know if that's going to come when that happens, is they were like, we're vegetarian. So they brought their own food. They brought bread, and so it's like,
there's
again,
some
we
in
had
place
to
of the turkey.
adjust.
Yeah.
So
No,
you'll
I
see
mean-
some Middle Eastern food there because they brought it.
Did you guys have a conversation about why the turkey is on lettuce? Because I don't know. I've not been to everybody's Thanksgiving. I don't know what everybody else does, but at my house,
But as with this family, he immigrated. The father on the left immigrated from Kenya. So that's the bread one.
Yeah.
But he immigrated from Kenya the year before Obama, and those were his 5. And he met this woman in Oregon. Those were his 5 children, and their spouses in the picture. And it's just, and my favorite, Saul Williams. This is crazy for me to be like, oh yeah, you just want to show up and be in the picture. But that to me is the most humbling thing, where people you really only know on screen are just like, yeah, we're just gonna come do this with you. Okay. But yeah, lettuce on turkey, I don't know.
So we're gonna
don't
open
need
it to
meat.
questions. There is a microphone present if you have one. Amy will come and find you with the microphone. Just raise your hand. If you've got anything you want to ask. Emily and Hank.
Anyone?
No. Oh,
There's
yay.
2 people in row 3.
Brave souls.
Hi, thank you for this. This is so beautiful. I wanted to ask the question about people representation in spaces and related to gentrification. So, especially here in DC, where the original people, inhabitants, community members are in locations, but they're being gentrified, pushed out of their space. So, how can you relate that as far as to photography and, like you were saying, Wesley, of community of people and how everybody should be different and we should also strive to live amongst different types of people, but at the same time, physically, the spaces are not like that anymore or turning to not be like that anymore.
The DC that I went to school in is not the DC that we're in today, and it's actually shocking to see that. And from a personal side, it's an adjustment, because there's something about the chocolate city that was really amazing, and the microculture, that happened and developed here over this time. However, I think everything changes, and it must change necessarily, and just because things were a certain way at certain time doesn't mean they should be in the future. And then, you meet and have to acknowledge, interact with people of the indigenous population who are like, none of y'all belong here. So like y'all are squabbling over like this, and like what are we like? We're not even acknowledging in most cases, and doing much to improve and pay homage to the genocide that happened on this land, so that we can be here together. And that's the kind of struggle I have, And when we made these images, the worship image, for instance, I was like, will these people want to worship together? Like, what does that mean? Well, is this sacrilegious to some of these people? And it only became possible, and so we didn't know until we shot it that day that people would be down to do it. So the questions that this work embodies are questions that go to your question is critical, but it's also like me having to accept and being willing to be part of things that are bigger than myself, regardless of how I personally feel about these things, is something that I think you could see in these images, and it's also something we try to promote with the Truth Booth and other projects.
Next question.
Thank you for these images. They are just mind-blowing. And I think they honor Rockwell in many ways, and it makes me wonder how Rockwell would react or respond to
It's a great
these
question.
images. But the question I have, everything's being turned upside down, and I'm wondering what would have happened had someone shown up at your shoot wearing a MAGA hat.
That was in our sketch.
It's, well,
As was.
can it?
Cannot.
You just did. Well, some of the very, very early sketches had a person in a Ku Klux Klan robe in the speaker position in the freedom of speech shot. And, we had a immigrant woman and her child in that position, all different kinds of people in the sketches. And we ultimately decided that in particular was a bridge too far.
Especially after Charlottesville.
Yes, absolutely. I do feel like if someone came with a MAGA hat, get in the picture. Get in the picture. I mean, this, in my opinion, this isn't, the America necessarily that, this country is not made up of, only people that I want to interact with and photograph. I feel like if we're trying to be representative, then,
And also, we didn't ask who did you vote for, where your values. It's just
Yeah,
like,
who
you're
knows?
here.
I
Hi.
mean, yeah.
Some people literally showed up off the street, like, oh, I see there's a lot of people in here. I'm like, hey.
I mean, yeah, that's a very good point. Like, who's to say what the people we did photograph, what their, stances are? I'm not sure. I am not a religious person at all, and I actually really, really love that this is the picture on the cover of Time. I really loved making those portraits of people in prayer, even though I can't really relate to how important it is to them. That has nothing to do with anything, though. It's, for me to be able to photograph an intimate moment, with someone that I don't know, and that I'm able to kind of have that little window into, someone who thinks differently than I do, into their world. I love that. That's great.
Do you think that photography and the time in which you did this project made this special? Is something that photography captures that gives it a different ring of authenticity? This is less aspirational and more an accurate depiction in some way? To what extent is your practice better able to convey these four aspirational elements of Americana as expressed by Roosevelt?
That's a really good question.
Question.
I don't know that it is a better way to communicate. It's how I communicate, how I know to communicate. In terms of, making photographs based on paintings, it's very challenging because as real as realism gets, there's often like perspective issues, there's depth of field issues.
I mean, just this, like how you got that guy in that position. And
I
then
mean,
in the Thanksgiving one, there's the guy in the corner who's also looking at us. It's just these people.
so if we shot this, with a camera in one shot, the majority of the people and objects would be out of focus. In the Rockwells, every single thing is tack sharp. So that is not realistic in terms of a photography practice. And so we had to approach it with that in mind, which means shooting lots of elements on their own, lots of different, what we call plates for, the people in the foreground, the food, the turkey, the people in the background, the room. Then you have to think about, do we blur the curtain a bit? Do we blur the wall a bit? Do we leave it sharp? Do we, all of those things are like decisions that we make along with our color palette, our lighting, our treatment, of the images in retouching and the skin work and skin tones, all of those kind of trying to keep a bit of a painterly, look and feel, but I never wanted it to look like a photo illustration. I wanted it to feel and look like a photograph. So there's really a fine line with the post work there of figuring out the best place to end up where, we're paying, respect, and we're being intentional about the choices we're making, trying to keep it in the world of the original paintings, but knowing that we couldn't possibly actually just boom, that's what it looks like that. So that's a very interesting question with a long answer, a long rambling answer.
I mean, when we shot, we did this not knowing it was going to work. Like, really not until after, like, we kind of, like, then it's like, okay, now how do we even start with like, when you have that many people, like, not only the amount of people, how many images You took
Period,
like
yeah.
5,000 pictures or
I'm
something?
sure.
Like,
I mean, we shot, in the Freedom from Fear, we basically built that bedroom in post. We did photograph in a house, but the architectural elements in the Rockwell, which really make that picture, there's a sloped wall, and you can see through the doorway. There's like a warm light in the hallway. None of those things were there. I photographed all of these individual elements. So, we did shoot a wall, we did shoot a hallway, we did shoot, a staircase, like a banister, all those things specifically to kind of bring it together.
And images
in the
like this.
end.
So this is a family. Michael Ealy is an actor, and he's a Christian African American, and his wife is Afghani Muslim, and their children are African American Muslim Christians, and that was part of the story. But then their daughter started crying in the middle of the image, and then she looks up at the camera, and we're like, I guess this is the one. But that's the kind of thing where you're like, and then I think there's another one. This family, like, these are two 3-year-olds trying to pretend they're asleep,
Yeah. Yeah.
and their dads are like,
We only had short windows of time with
Get
with
those
the-
critters
with
an
the
Oscar.
kids.
but I mean, and that there's, and then so that, I mean, for us, that's kind of like that was what, yeah. So and this was like but seeing the single father and the single mother, but and this was again, she sat down like these were them and their real kind of relationships to their families in these images, but it was all like the room was white and there was like
Yeah, it didn't really look like this when we shot it.
it looked like it was like this basically. So like how do you create an intimacy? And I mean it's astounding.
I mean, I'm sure Rockwell would say he had his own challenges. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean,
But no, I mean, that's a great question. It's obvious the distinction. I mean, they're different. I mean, the reason that you don't see the faces, I would imagine, in the Rockwells also is to create both a naturalism and to kind of show off, right? Like, I don't need to show you the heads in these images. Whereas, I don't know what were the conversations about. I mean, you sort of answered this question a little bit about why you're seeing everybody, but it also is just it probably would be a bad photograph if you couldn't in some ways.
well,
right?
I mean, this especially is about a family, and we definitely want to see that there are children in the bed. We don't need to see all of every kid's face, but I think it needs to be clear what's happening in the picture. I think thinking about, Rockwell and painting versus making a photograph, you can make a painting, you have total control. You can make that room look however you want. You can, make the space, the people, so he made his choices, and then, we are dealing with a pretty good level of control in 2019 of how photographs look. We can make things look however we want. We can shoot things in a way that, build rooms that aren't there, and it's a little frightening sometimes, what we have within our capabilities as photographers, but I don't know if someone set out to do this in 1980, like I don't think they'd have the same tools to pull from that we have today.
But he did photograph real people to make his images, but
Based
they
on
were all
models, right.
composites, and the only way you composite in that way was through painting.
Right.
Okay, everybody. Thanks for coming. Is there one more question? Okay. Yeah, where's the microphone? This is our last question.
Kanan Kennedy.
Good evening, everyone. I guess my question to you guys is, I assume that you guys are preaching to the choir, so the question that was asked earlier was, why did you do this? But, who is it for, essentially? Because we have a faction of people who don't believe, or who actually believe that these aren't sort of antiquated notions, like they want to hold on to this idea of what America is. Maybe this is when 1943 is when America was great. So how do you then convince a faction of people that this is a narrative that needs to be told, that these stories are their stories and everything is kind of intertwined?
Is that and cut?
Oh, really? Okay.
You should answer.
No,
Me? I didn't make the work. I mean, I'm not speaking for you guys, but okay. Well,
Like, I'm sure there was some pushback. Like, we don't know. But I would imagine that there was some pushback. Like, oh, why
I
did
got
you
a couple raw comments on my
why did you change
Instagram.
something that didn't need change?
Yep.
So who is it for? I mean,
you know, why not is maybe the thing I would say first, but I also feel like, you know, yes, we all, I think what you said in the very beginning about Rockwell being both innocent and guilty, or, you know, I'm not sure if I'm quoting correctly,
that's right.
but, you know, like in the right and maybe a part of the problem at the same time, like, you know, it's like, well, you did something. He did something. He, you know, and I feel like it's like you and Eric sitting around, oh, we should do this, we should do that, and then it's someone saying, well, you guys should actually do it, you know, if you're gonna do it. So it's sort of like, well, then that person who has an issue should maybe make their own work and you know, put their point of view out there so that we can further that conversation and see where they're coming from. So this is, you know, we tried to do our best to you know, be representative of the population of the country or you know, modern times, and you know, we're only human. We can only do what we can do. But
I also think that like the reason to revisit work is to see how it works in different eras, right? I mean, it's the reason. I mean, not to be this person because it's such a tired thing to say, but it's true. But this is why Shakespeare is still around, right? Mm-hmm. It is because he is like the cut and paste, mix and match, recontextualize, remix, rethink, recast, to see what that work does when it connects with a moment.
an age-old issue, you know, like love,
Right.
good versus evil, like, you know, freedom of speech, being able to worship, like being in control of your body, like all of these, they're conversations that haven't gone away.
Right.
So
yeah, and when the Rockwells were made, the country was at war, right? I mean, that's part of the propaganda of the images of the original images in a lot of ways, is that this was an attempt. I mean, these images appeared in the Saturday Evening Post, along with 4 essays, by the way, 3 of which are great, and like just basically sort of espousing the principles of that aspect of FDR's speech. I don't know. I mean, the reason to do it is like we're still at war. Right. And we don't want to acknowledge the very many wars we're still at. But outside these people's houses, probably inside their houses if they have computers, there's war of all kinds. I don't know.
And then also, I mean, every president since 1980, American president, has said they wanted to make America great again. And so we hope that this is just yet another kind of imagination of what that looks like.
That seems right, everybody.
that seems right. Yeah.
We're I just want to say that I love these pictures. I thank you both for them.
Thank you.
And it was a pleasure to sit up here and talk with you guys for longer than we were supposed to. So thank you for that.
Thank you guys so much.
And thank you to the Hirshhorn and to Melissa Chu and her staff. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for hanging out.
Come back. Come see the show. Good night.